I mean, art's been around since humans have been around. I mean, not just visual art, but music, dance, all the expressive arts. And it's a gathering, it's a celebration, I just think that there's a lot of potential.
Art in and of itself is a vulnerable act. Like any act of creation is vulnerable. And I find it's really interesting how that vulnerability creates a sense of bondedness, with one another. I honestly feel like creating art with others is a way of kind of like tapping back into that sense of community, kind of opens that memory file.
Yes, I can make art on my own, but I feel like, having that connection of people either seeing my art or going and seeing other people's art or just sharing the process of making art.
Allowing that part of themselves to come out and express itself, and in the company of someone else witnessing that can be really transformative and healing. We've been envisioning this space for a really long time. We did a creative arts day camp. It was during that I was like, we really need a space that is a larger, like, central space for students to get their hours and for the community to see what we're doing and to engage with us. So it's been a part of our vision for a very, very long time.
We had started expanding spatially when we first came into Lewis and Clark as a program, and we were looking in the community. We weren't looking at the space. And one of the issues that came up was COVID, right? So we ended up having to just put a pause on everything. And as a result of COVID, the space opened up because a lot of people ended up leaving, other businesses left. And so it gave us the opportunity to maneuver and explore what it is that we needed, and also supporting the other programs that are here too.
We were hosting our open studio sessions in one of the classrooms in the art building. And I had brought the idea of the open studios from Chicago, where I was engaging in open studio with the Open Studio Project in Evanston on a regular basis. And I knew the potential of what it could do for this community. So we had students leading those groups and community members coming, but having it on campus, it wasn't as accessible as having something in the community.
The systems are set up more for that insurance fee-for-service kind of model, where what we are bringing in, I think, is an element that is not traditional, is having a space that doesn't require that you come in and we have to diagnose you, that doesn't have all those formal, more medicalized options, and being able to come from more of a liberated approach and welcoming anyone who's like, I need this, and having them to have the space.
Now more than ever, there's such an incredible need for mental health services. Oregon ranks last when it comes to access to care.
Depression is really big. I find that that's probably one of the biggest things that I see in the work that I do, and a lot of times it has to do with social isolation or not having a voice or any kind of creative license in their life.
Engagement with materials and media helps relax your nervous system.
When people have been traumatized and are super hypervigilant or just really anxious, there's something that happens. You can hear their breath change. There's just this sort of relaxing thing that happens. I mean, the peers really support each other, and being with your peers and being seen and understood and having community and other people who are struggling also be in that community, it's just beautiful.
The medical model in training that's essential for students to be able to navigate as practitioners into that field. This space really provides that and a larger, more connected gathering.
Having these community-based settings, I think, is really needed and really valuable. Whether it's open studio or support groups or even some types of group therapy, it's not just focused around wellness. It's really easy to focus on wellness as a goal and not take into consideration the broader social context. So when you have people who are marginalized in some way, non-white, immigrant populations, LGBT, a lot of the reason why we struggle in life isn't because there's something wrong with us, it's because we're functioning in this unhealthy system. Minority stress has been really well documented as having this correlation with both mental illness and a lot of physical health issues. I really love that these community settings also have the potential to get people having those conversations and thinking, how can I improve my community? How can I make changes? How can I build spaces that are safe and supportive for people like me and people from my communities? That all these people are coming together because we think that's important and we want to work on it together. And knowing I'm not the only one thinking about these things makes me feel a lot less isolated. It's just nice to feel like you're not alone, no matter what issues you're going through. And so that's what gives me the most hope.
Open Studio is a place to invite community in, to make art or appreciate art. So Open Studio in theory is a place where anyone can go.
People can come and be together and create art together. And I believe in terms of like its purpose, it's just a place where people can connect, express themselves and be seen by each other, and take up space in whatever way they need to, really, in the creative domain.
Open studio sessions are co-led by our students with a faculty supervisor there to support them, and they're in training and learning how to be art therapists. It's a space where there's a set structure, and if someone were to come, they would be oriented with like a little like introduction, and this is what we're going to work on today, in hopes that they can find their own creative voice through their own art process. The open studio sessions are the open studio process, where the process is the focus of the art making, and the art for social change usually is talking about something that's happening in society that's related and relevant, and there's art, a space to be able to process what's happening and use that space to be able to connect with others.
Depending on where I'm at, I'll either want to contribute to the conversation or share my work while I'm making it or ask questions, and other times really just get to be in my own space while not being lonely. And when I pause, when I'm making art around other people, I don't fixate on what I'm making or think about ways I have to change it.
You come into it knowing that you're going to make some art and knowing that everyone in the area is going to be making art. It's genuinely a space for like anyone to join us.
In envisioning the space, community was a really important element.
It's been interesting to like witness it before, while it was still under construction, to when it's like completely filled with like 100 people, and to recognize the potential of what it could be. I think it's been exhilarating.
My third or fourth time there, there was a bunch of students and community members, and we were told to just make art and explore the materials and what was available. And I remember that being a very fun time because it was the first time we got to make art there, and the first time I got to like dive deep into at that time was just boxes of art supplies. And the five of us had a great time just making art and like acknowledging like, hey, we're here for the first time. This is the first ever open studio here, and we did it.
There's something special about being able to look around and see that other people are making something entirely different or notice similarities. It gets me out of myself. It's like a very different way to make art that's not about me and what I want and what I think will work. It's special to be around people in open studio where there's not that kind of inner critic or any critics around you.
Being creative can support people to be themselves or to reconnect.
Those kinds of risks help outside of that art studio, out of that open studio. Those kinds of creative risks build confidence, self-awareness, experimentation, spontaneity, So having a place to do that and feel safe is very important.
Especially when you're focusing on a common topic or theme or emotion, that can be really powerful because you have your way of working through it, but you can also see what solutions people come up with for their own life. And I think it's a really good way to get an idea of different tools that you can use. And it also can be really hard to take time for yourself to make art when you're just at home. This kind of group setting, I think, just gives people permission to sit with themselves and get in touch with themselves and their own creativity in a way that's very hard to do in other spaces.
Our program was really in need of something that was more robust, especially because in our accreditation, we're required to teach students how to manage and work within a studio setting as a part of their learning.
The new space it's wonderful. It's so big. And so we can accommodate so many different people and opportunities for art making materials. For instance, we did a printmaking experience and we were able to lay out prints in one area of the studio and have printmaking going on at different stations for folks. In the other space, we wouldn't have been able to probably accommodate what we were doing there.
The event that I attended there was for the papermaking. And I found it really interesting. The event itself was kind of a dual platform, like the presenters or the teachers of the class were in virtual space in other parts of the world, and we were in the classroom space. So I thought that was really interesting. And it was very well coordinated. It was very synchronized, which I really appreciated. I knew absolutely nothing about papermaking when I came into this space. I was sort of on a whim, had registered for it. So I wasn't really sure what to expect. So I found myself very curious about the process and very engaged. It was kind of childlike, like watching the chemistry of it. And it was interesting how my table mates and I, that ended up being sort of like a bonding thing between us, going through that process together. Ended up sharing parts of our hope with one another and kind of blending and kind of having a bit of a shared creation. In terms of this space itself, I found the room to be very accessible. Everything we needed was in the space, so I felt like I could just kind of come in and settle in. And yeah, it was a good experience.
On World Collage Day, we had a reveal. We did an Exquisite Corpse event, thinking that the space that Lewis and Clark was having or going to be available as a gallery space, that might be a nicer space to have the reveal. We each do a part of a body. We take a big piece of paper, fold it up into 4 parts, and everybody does a part. There's an excitement that builds and anticipating what section am I going to get, and what are the other people going to do. And so then it happened. Yeah, it was super fun to see everybody come and bring their family members, and it was just, I hope that we can do it again.
When I was there, I went super out of my comfort zone and tried sewing and like making a stuffed butterfly. And it was nice because the materials were there. It's not something I would have gravitated towards because I'm very set in my ways about what I feel comfortable using. And when I was doing the Zoom option and a lot of what I created, though it was really helpful and I enjoyed my time, it was still super all my familiar material. And being in person, I was also kind of like, well, there's nothing to lose. And I also got a lot of help from people who were sitting around the table. I appreciated having those materials there and the community that knew more than me about what I was trying to do to help me kind of get from point A to point B.
I think the space is set up in a way that it really remains flexible for any art material to be accessed. All the tables and chairs are movable, all the equipment is on wheels. So that was intentional so that we could really maximize the space. We also have a number of generous donations that have been provided to us. Some things that come to mind is we have an enormous lightbox table. We have flat files to store larger pieces of artwork, plethora of fiber arts materials, jewelry making materials, and sculpting materials. It's really endless. And for people who need additional support outside of the services that are provided in the studio, we're able to have a net there to be able to connect them with a primary therapist that they can meet with individually. I actually made some art in one of the open studio sessions, and it ended up being like a universe and a galaxy with multiple galaxies in it, and that really helped me solidify like the endless potential of what this space could be. And it just makes me so excited and proud and energized, and really wanting to invite more people in to make this a space where there's community and there's care. I'm hoping that the gallery and exhibition space provides a bridge and a window into understanding people's experiences, especially people who have been on or at the margins, spaces where artists and community members can come together.
Opening to the public, it's just starting, and I think that there's so many opportunities that we have. I could see down the road having like an after school thing with kids, or maybe a student group, or faculty, or burnout groups.
I also think about things like self-care for people in the medical field, being really focused about supporting people who are in service to the community, people like EMTs and nurses who could use some self-care.
Creating spaces for everyday artists to exhibition their art, not necessarily for sale, but just for the enrichment of the community. Again, kind of like the bondedness of the vulnerability and showing your pieces, because every art sort of needs a witness, right? And so having more events along those lines could be really lovely.
I'm hoping that people who see this documentary reach out and talk to us and share their ideas about how they'd like to be involved.